Hey everybody, PB here, as in Panda Bear. Pastor Bart will be here in a minute to share with you this week's message. The big question he's going to tackle is, why am I here? Which seems like a pretty easy question to me. I exist to eat bamboo and look cute and cuddly. Which reminds me, I'm hungry. See ya.
Well, hey, gang. I'm not sure I'd call that panda cute or cuddly. More like creepy. But thanks for joining me. And yes, I do want to explore with you the meaning of life. That is, why you and I exist. In July of 1999, Barry Sanders shocked the football world by announcing his retirement at the height of his career. Lacking only 1,400 yards to eclipse the all-time NFL rushing record, many considered him the greatest running back of all time. So naturally, coaches and commentators and football fans around the country tried to lure him back. While some said that he should return for the record, others suggested that he should come back for the money, the fame, the fans. But in a local newspaper, Facts, the low-profile running back simply stated, "My desire to return to football is less than my desire to leave." And with that, he boarded a plane and flew to Europe. Why would a man pass up millions of dollars, a place in history, the adoration of thousands, and a high-profile lifestyle? After all, isn't that the American dream? Well, it wasn't for Sanders. Like others, he found those pursuits to be empty, temporary, and meaningless. And he's not alone. A USA Today poll posed this question: what would you ask God if you could get a direct and immediate answer? Think about that. What would you ask God? You know, if you knew he would answer you directly and right away. Well, by far, the number one response was, what's my purpose here? Or as we're considering it today, why am I here? Why do I exist on this little old planet we call Earth? Well, every day we go off to school or work, or well, I guess you haven't been going off to school. Whatever you've been doing at home, we come back and we eat and we sleep, and our lives are they're as predictable as a hamster on a wheel in a cage, running in circles, but not really going anywhere, accomplishing anything. And this existence forces us to ask a big question: why am I here? Maybe we can learn something from a conversation between a canary in a cage and a lark on a windowsill. The lark looked in at the canary and asked, "What is your purpose?" "My purpose is to eat seeds," said the canary. The lark pressed, "What for?" To which the canary chimed, "So I can be strong." Again the lark demanded, "What for?" "So I can sing," answered the canary. "What for?" continued the lark. And the canary explained, "Because when I sing, I get more seed." "So you eat in order to get strong, so you can sing, so you can get more seed, so you can eat?" asked the lark. "Yes," came the reply. "There's more to you than that," the lark offered. "If you'll follow me, I'll help you find it. But you must leave your cage." It's tough to find meaning in a caged world, isn't it? Perhaps we could learn from that lark, and the truth that we discover will set us free from a meaningless existence. Instead of seeking God's plan for our lives, we often pursue substitutes to add meaning to our lives. Although some of these pursuits are really not all that bad in and of themselves, these pursuits are ultimately empty. In fact, Solomon tried to find meaning to life in 7 common pursuits that distract us. The first is education, learning. Solomon wanted to know something, and you can read about that in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 7. And today in our culture, we have rightly elevated higher learning and gaining knowledge and getting degrees. But knowledge does not make a person better in a moral sense. What's more, some people spend their entire lives gaining facts while failing to grasp and apply the truth. Paul was a brilliant thinker, and he wrote this. He said, "Some are ever learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth." And then there's pleasure. Solomon wanted to enjoy something. You can read about that in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. This substitute would include the search for happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. Or the pursuit of, hedonistic pleasure. And our culture has an unhealthy obsession with pleasure. I mean, aren't we just always saying, entertain me, thrill me, stimulate me? This has seduced so many people into obsessive behaviors and even addictions. And then there's a job, work. Solomon wanted to do something. Ecclesiastes 2:4. And we guys especially, we define ourselves by our work, right? But unfortunately, if we lose our job or we retire, all of a sudden we've kind of lost our sense of purpose. We've diminished our sense of meaning. And then there's stuff. How many of you guys like stuff, right? Solomon wanted to have stuff. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 7 through 8. And, man, we probably have more stuff than any nation in the history of the world. But we still cry more, more, more. And of course, the accumulation of things never produces satisfaction or meaning. We're a lot like Rockefeller when he was asked, how much is enough? And he replied, $1 more. Then there's power and fame. Solomon wanted to become something. Ecclesiastes 2:9. Solomon recognized that he had become a great king. But did that make him happy or feel complete? No. He whined, "I hated my life." Then there's helping. Now that sounds like something worthwhile and good, doesn't it? And Solomon, he wanted to help people. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. But for those who reject the reality of God, our first big question, for people who don't believe that God exists, doing good deeds for fellow humans is probably the only noble pursuit of life. But even this is meaningless if we're just glorified animals, if we're just accidents in this huge universe of ours. And then there's relationships. I know some of you guys are pretty big on relationships, and Solomon was too. He wanted to be connected to others, but he was the wisest man in the world. But how wise can a man be that takes on 1,000 wives, right? Even a good thing. like loving relationships, can create stress and disappointment. Solomon is a great example. I encourage you to read the whole book of Ecclesiastes. It's not very long, but it's got some great stuff in there I think that you'll find beneficial. But Solomon, he bows his gray head and he mourns 5 times in his book that all of these things are empty. And he tried it all. And he realized that all these pursuits were unfulfilling. After spending his entire life pursuing all of these things and coming up empty, the wise King Solomon finally came to understand life's ultimate goal. And Solomon reduces the purpose of life down to 2 elements. The first is fear God, or know God properly. No life will ever experience meaning without God. Now, Solomon wasn't suggesting that people just try religion, attend church or something like that. Instead, he instructs us to know God properly. That is, on God's terms. A holy God deserves and demands reverence and adoration. In short, Solomon challenges us to have a personal relationship with God based on faith and grace. By faith, we know God. And by grace, we're accepted by God. The second element is to keep his commandments, or in other words, to serve him faithfully. Jesus said that all the commandments could be reduced down to 2. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. If we begin to live our lives in accordance with these 2 commands, we'll begin to experience a sense of meaning and purpose. And the world will notice that our lives and our faith are worthy of a second look. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. A man once stood before God and his heart was breaking from the pain and injustice in the world. And he cried out, "Dear God, look at all the suffering and the anguish and the distress in your world. Why don't you send help?" And God responded, "I did send help. I sent you." But what good is it to live a meaningful life, a purposeful life, and yet give no thought to eternity? You see, that's part of our purpose in life too. Eventually, most people will consider the reality of eternity. I did a little funeral yesterday, and every time I do that, it causes me and causes those who gather to think about, is there life after this one is over? And those that recognize that life continues after death will have to wonder what impact their present life will have on that life to come. And hopefully some will come to see that the decisions and actions of our lives determines the place and the quality of our eternal existence. In other words, life prepares us for eternity, good or bad. Everyone in Cabrini Green, one of Chicago's toughest housing projects, it seems knows 63-year-old Brother Bill. He's hard to miss. He wears a flowing sky blue cassock made from hundreds of tattered denim patches. And Brother Bill's mission is to bring peace to the troubled housing project. 53 times by his count, he has waded into gunfire in order to stop it. 53 times the gunfire has stopped. And 53 times he has emerged unscathed. He talks trigger-itching assailants into putting away their guns and going home to their families. He sits beside wounded gangsters who hope to die and persuades them to live. And he insists that there's nothing special about him or his accomplishments. He just says, I'm an ordinary man on an extraordinary mission. He doesn't preach. He loves. One of his fans is a 22-year-old vice lord who said this about Brother Bill. I really think God sent him here. Brother Bill is a man who understands why he is here. Do you? Well, I love you guys, and I hope that you are living with purpose. See you next time.